Which wide receivers should the Titans be targeting in this draft? We're going to talk about options in the second round, options if they trade down, and options if they wait until day 3. Justin has been doing nonstop film study. I've been doing some of my own, not as much as Justin, but enough to talk about it with you guys here today. Let's get into it. This is the Music City Audible podcast. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible, where we're not talking about Cam Ward. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. We're presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. Justin, we teased this on the last episode. We're talking receivers today. How's it going?
Doing well. And, I just realized the last video that we put out, or I guess before the Zach Lyons episode, was your Cam Ward, Steve McNair. That did 20,000 hits for us. There might be some first-time listeners, some first-time viewers this weekend. We hope you'll stick around, and we hope that you'll love the pod. This is a Tennessee Titans pod. I'm with the Draft Network. Graver's with Underdog. You might not even know who we are. It's always weird for me to think that there are people discovering us on YouTube who don't know who we are. Not that, not to sound cocky or anything, but it's just such a different audience, I think, on YouTube from our Twitter audience, if you will, that there might be people who don't even know who we are, and we never tell them, really, right? Because we just we think you know who we are. But I'm with the Draft Network. Graver's with Underdog Sports. We're Tennessee Titans guys. We came together for this Titans pod. I'm an NFL draft expert, so we spend a lot of our time during the draft talking about the draft. I interview prospects. That's kind of my niche, if you will. And I'm excited to talk about receivers. The Titans might target at number 35. Long time coming, taking a break from the Cam Ward content, as Graver said. We've done a lot of it. Most of you love it. There was 2 of you that were maybe talk about something else. And we get that. The Titans have other picks. They have a lot of needs. We do need to get into what they have to do elsewhere on the roster. So excited to talk about these wideouts today.
Yes. Justin, can I say one thing about Cam Ward before we move on? Because you mentioned the Air McNair. I can't. You mentioned the Air McNair video that we put out, I think, last Sunday. And here's the thing about that video is that I've been sitting on it. I've been thinking about it. There's one thing I wish I had said in that video that I didn't say. And I'm bummed out that I thought about this too late, but I'll say it now for anyone who's still tuning in. This pod's not going to do 20,000 views, so most people who watched that video won't get this extra bit of information, but that's okay. And that's that as much as I see similarities between Cam Ward and Steve McNair, I think it's silly to say that comparing him to anybody, including the greats, Patrick Mahomes, Steve McNair, whoever you want to compare Cam Ward to, that you're setting him up to fail, I think is a hilarious idea, as if what I say in a YouTube video has any bearing on Cam Ward's actual career. Yeah, maybe some fans are a little more excited than they would have been without my video, but I'd be foolish to think, and you're foolish to think, that my video has that much sway on people's opinions. And the last thing is that as much as we want to compare Cam Ward to these great quarterbacks, the real ceiling, the real ultimate ideal dream scenario is that Cam Ward is never compared to another quarterback. It's that future quarterbacks are compared to Cam Ward. That's what you really hope for. I'm not saying that's going to happen, obviously. I'm saying that's what you ultimately, that is the top of the mountain that you hope you get out of the first overall pick. Joe Burrow doesn't get compared to anybody anymore. Patrick Mahomes doesn't get compared to anybody anymore. Josh Allen, these guys are their own comparison for future prospects. And we hope one day, maybe, if everything goes absolutely perfect and Titans fans get lucky, that can be the case for Cam Ward as well. But anyway, let's get into these receivers, Justin. We're going to talk about some guys that Titans fans love, some guys that are a little more polarizing, and maybe some guys that are less talked about that deserve a bit more attention. And we're going to start with the 2 players that many Titans fans are crossing their fingers and praying will fall to pick 35. There's a lot of buzz about these guys falling out of the first round. Most of the mock drafts that are coming out now do not have either of these guys going in the first round, whereas they did have them as first rounders a month ago, 2 months ago. I'm, of course, talking about Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka and Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. They both have, I think, really high upside as receivers. I think there are some fair concerns about their abilities as well. And I want to start with Egbuka because I think we see him in some ways the same and in some ways kind of different. But tell me, just a basic profile for someone who's never watched a lick of Egbuka's film, what you would say to get them caught up on who he is as a prospect.
Yeah, I'm really high on him. He's probably my favorite realistic target for the Titans at 35. I'll start by saying it's probably not where you expect me to go, but I also really like the pairing with Cam Ward. I think he does his best work across the middle. I think he's a savvy, detailed route runner, can run a full route tree, but is at his best in the short to intermediate areas. And I think we've talked on this pod about how Cam Ward's had his most success targeting the middle of the field, more of a between the numbers as opposed to an outside the numbers thrower. And I think that's where Emeka really does his best work. I think he's short area quickness and explosiveness at the line of scrimmage. I think he's got terrific yard after catch ability. I think he's just physical enough, especially in the blocking game. I think that's one area he really surprised me in when I turned the tape on. I'm a big fan. I think he, again, one of the better route runners in this class. He's got good, solid size for the position. Not outstanding, but very good, very solid size. And he's my favorite potential target at 35.
Yeah, I'm looking at his reception perception profile here from Matt Harmon, and you mentioned he does things well that Cam Ward is good at, which is, throwing over the middle, throwing the seam. Now, when it comes to success by route, his worst routes were actually the 9, the go ball, which Cam Ward, that might be the throw that he struggles with the most. The post, which is interesting because that's one that Cam Ward's very good at, and the curl, which he still has a 75% success rate. I mean, he has high marks in most of these categories, but 75% is among his worst success rates, and apparently the curl route is more easily successful for most receivers, so 75 puts him in, a lower tier there. He's really good at corner routes, out routes, comeback routes. He has a 100% success rate. Slant routes, screens, flats are where he really excels.
The comeback in the slant really stands out to me there. Because number one, I think the comeback, for you to be great at the comeback, that for me, that's separation quickness at the top of your route, right? I think his ability to kind of stop on a dime, come back to the football really stands out on tape. And then the slant, I mean, it's so obvious. It's exactly what I'm thinking about when I say I think he pairs so well with what Cam Ward does well. So big fan of this guy in the short to intermediate. Just love what he does across the middle.
Yeah, I think he's, like you mentioned, he's a physical player. He's really good at the catch point, like really, really good at the catch point, going up and turning contested balls into winnable catches for himself. Physical, like in the end zone, in the red zone area where there's not as much space to create. He does a good job of getting open. Some areas where I have a little bit of concern with him is that I think he is probably a slot-only receiver at the next level. That's not to say that he's not big and physical and he can block in the run game. Like he adds pluses to your offense, not just as a receiver. Like he can help in the run game. But I do think he's probably a slot only, which I think raises some questions about the value of taking a player like that at 35. Now, there are slot onlys that are some of the best receivers in their draft classes in the NFL that have gone on to have, great careers from the slot. Cooper Kupp is a mostly slot guy. I wouldn't say slot only for Cooper Kupp, but there are players that do their best work in the slot and are really good NFL receivers. So maybe Emeka Egbuka can be that. But the Titans also need an X receiver. That doesn't mean they can't find one later in the draft or wait until next year and just throw, I don't know, Bryce Oliver out at the X position or put Calvin Ridley a little out of position and put him, Van Jefferson, a big-bodied guy that could maybe play on the outside. Don't get me started. Egbuka has actually a high success rate against press coverage, which is nice to know, but he had very limited press coverage reps, so it's a small sample size. Hard to know, level of competition and all that there. There was a game that he played against Jabbar Muhammad, who pretty much erased him using press coverage, so that's a concern you have and another reason why he might be a slot-only guy. All that said, I think he's a great option for the Titans, but I do wonder if, what's his ceiling? As in, he's not a wide receiver 1, right? He's probably never going to be a wide receiver 1. He's probably a really good complement to your passing attack, which means I think, there might be better fits in the NFL for getting the most out of him versus putting him in a situation in Tennessee where you need a guy to be highly productive right away. That said, and I don't like to scout the helmet, but sometimes it makes sense. Ohio State has put nothing but great receivers into the league for the last decade. And I kind of would be down just to take a chance on the next in line guy who was producing at a high level with Marvin Harrison Jr. on the roster across from him, with Jackson Smith and Jigba on the roster. He was still producing at a high level with those guys around him. With Jeremiah Smith last year, he had more catches than Jeremiah Smith on last year's team. So look, when you're out producing top talent like that, that says something. I think that was a big proponent of why JSN went, where he went in the draft that he went in, because he was on the same team as Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And so yeah, I'm in on Egbuka at 35, but I do need to mention my hesitations there as well.
where I'll slightly push back, but also agree with you a little is, and you didn't say this, but when I think like, slot only, I tend to think like undersized and like, I think he could play Z, right? So I'm not going to call him slot only, but yeah, I do agree that he's probably not an X at the next level. I'd be pretty surprised if he played X, but slot only, like he's not, Jaquan Jackson, Roman Wilson, Adam Humphreys way back. Like I do think he can play some Z as well. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if, they got Calvin Ridley at Z now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Z ends up his best fit at the next level.
Yeah, I could see that too. Sorry, but I don't think he's your like isolated boundary receiver guy,
No,
which is a role the Titans desperately need right now. And Calvin Ridley could do it, but you're asking him to do something that he's not as good at, which limits his, ceiling in your offense too.
I think the only reason I can't get where you are, and I get it because they need an X, they need a T. Higgins, a DeAndre Hopkins, a type that Brian Callahan has had in recent years. The only reason I can't fully get there is I just think he's a really good football player, and this team is going to spend so much time in 11 personnel that he's always on the field. And if he's, impacting the game the way I think he can. And I think I could be a high volume guy. Like I see what you mean that he's not a receiver one, but I do think this is the kind of guy because he's so good short to intermediate. Like I think this guy could have 7, 8, 9 catches every game in the right situation, in the right offense, especially when you don't have, a ton of other alternative options like the Titans don't. So even though he's not an X, I think he's on the field always. And I can see him being a high volume target.
I can too. I think he has a decent ceiling for what his role will be. I just don't like he's not an 1,800-yard, 18 touchdown Jamar Chase lead the league in receiving
might be
guy.
Garrett Wilson though. That might be the comp. Like he might be like a 1,200-yard. Garrett Wilson. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's not a great X either, right? Like he's not. And they brought in Devontae Adams. They had Alan Lazard. So it's like I think that's probably the ceiling. But I could see some similarities to Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's talk about Luther Burden because I have some strong concerns about Luther Burden that you do not share. Luther Burden's maybe it's Egbuka and Burden, but Burden might be more heavily liked by Titans fans as a potential guy to slide to 35. Like, I think there's reasons that he could slide to 35 that really scare me. And I'm not saying Luther Burden is not going to be a good player in the NFL. I think if he goes to the right team, he could be an excellent player. But I think he needs to go. So before I get into my criticisms, tell us about Luther Burden, Justin, your overall 1,000-foot view, scouting evaluation of him, general. What is he? Who is he as a prospect?
I can't quit the guy. Like I want to, but I can't. It's and look, I make such few exceptions, to be honest with you, to go back and watch 2023 tape because every year, make sure you watch all 4 years. I think some of that can be, there's obviously exceptions for injury and stuff, but for the most part, teams want to know what you've done lately and what kind of player you are right now, for the most part. So I think sometimes we blow out of proportion that you got to watch all 4 years of tape. With this guy, it's an exception because their passing offense was so damn terrible this past season. It really limited his capabilities, his production. You look at you can box score scout and see that this guy was way better in 2023 than he was in 2024. He's got to take some accountability for that. Everyone does. But, we're keeping it a buck. The passing offense, Brady Cook, it was just so terrible this past season that you should go back and watch a little 2023. On Luther Burden. I think he's dynamic. I think he's explosive. I think he's got some of the best short area quickness in this entire class. What's one thing that really convinced me about him, further convinced me, I'll say, there's all these questions about him, coming into the year, again, I'm at the Draft Network. Like we were talking about this guy in August, September, top 10 player in the draft, might be receiver one, yada, yada. The year didn't go as he wanted it to, as I said. But then I get to the combine, okay? You can pull it up because I'm going off memory here. I think it was 4.41 40. The speed was unquestionable, was outstanding. The athletic numbers were great. And then better yet, something you're not going to find on the combine page that you just had to watch, right? Old fashioned, the gauntlet. Okay, go back, please. And I tweeted it out. It was one of my best performing tweets this year. I didn't expect it to do. He retweeted it. I didn't even tag him. I didn't expect it to do as well as it was going to. He ran the best gauntlet of any receiver there. That thing was 10 out of 10 perfection, okay? Smooth, ball tracking, hand-eye coordination. It was the best gauntlet any receiver ran. Again, we all want to focus on the 40, the testing, yada, yada. You can't assign a score, a number grade to the gauntlet. I get it. It is so important. Teams love it. It was the best one there. I was just like, not pat myself on the back, but yes, what you think about this guy. You're going to die on this hill, stick to this opinion. Now, there's off-field stuff. I can't talk about that. It could derail the whole thing. There's a lot of smoke regarding off-field attitude, blah, blah, blah. I'm a huge fan of the player, the on-field stuff. I've got very little questions about the on-field ability. Super high on him if he could put the attitude together. So
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there, but you didn't say some things that would make me feel better about him, I guess. That's where I'm going to go with this. And that's that, like I said, I think he needs the right situation to thrive. If you bring him into your offense, if the Titans bring in Luther Burden, they say, all right, we got Calvin Ridley and Luther Burden. Calvin Ridley, you're going to play Z, or maybe we're going to force you into the X spot. Burden, you're going to be our Z or our slot. I think he can move around and play multiple positions there.
Both.
But he's also not an X, which, again, I'm going to get hung up on this. The Titans need an X thing, and, if I need to get crucified for that, then so be it. But I feel pretty strongly the Titans need a dominant X player, and they don't have one, and Luther Burden is not that. Furthermore, Luther Burden does not run routes very well. He is not a good, polished route runner. And if you're spending the 35th overall pick on a guy because he's elusive with the ball in his hands and moves well with short area quickness, to me, there is a lot of high risk, high reward with this player. And the reason I think that if he goes to a situation where you have an established dominant receiver who's going to draw double coverage on the outside and give him off coverage and open space to work underneath and over the middle of the field, then I think we're talking about a guy who can be really productive. But the Titans don't have that right now, the way their roster is set up. Maybe they find him. Maybe they find that X that's going to demand double coverage later in the draft. Someone we'll talk about here soon could be that guy. But to me, there's so much that could go wrong with Luther Burden that I'm not willing to risk that just because of what could go right. Like, I don't think he's a similar player to Treylon Burks. And I'm throwing this comparison out there, and it's going to make Titans fans roll their eyes. And if you've watched Luther Burden, you know that they're not really that similar players. But some similarities exist in that I don't think Treylon Burks ran a very polished route tree in college. I think he did most of his work with the ball in his hands after the catch. Now, I think that skill, for some reason, for Burks did not translate to the NFL. And I think it will translate for Burden. Get the ball in his hands in space, and he's going to create explosive plays. But when it's 3rd and 7, and you need your guys to just go beat man coverage, is Luther Burden going to be that guy for you? That's where I struggle to see his role in Tennessee. I think there are plenty of teams that could take him, like, I don't know, the Packers, or insert team that has one or two great receivers already. Then you're talking about a guy who can come in and be an impact player. But for Tennessee, it really scares me asking to put a lot of expectations and production needs on him as a rookie, given the state of the roster. That's my Luther Burden take.
I'm not going to push back. What I will say is, and I'm projecting here a little bit, that's what the NFL draft is. You're projecting. I think the route running was greatly impacted by how gimmicky they had to make their passing offense because the quarterback was so bad. Like, I think there's a chance. Like, when I see that short area quickness, the explosiveness, what he does with the ball in his hands, I find it hard to believe I can't get this guy to run a great slant or run a great comeback route or a dig. Like some of the maybe lesser, complex stuff in an NFL playbook. And I'm not saying he can't do the more complex stuff, but at the very least, I do think what was put on tape was greatly impacted by just how terrible the quarterback was.
And that may be the case, but like you're saying, it's a projection. And there are other guys in this class where it's not a projection because we saw them do it at the college level. We saw them run extremely crisp, polished routes. We saw them beat press man coverage routinely. We saw them dominate against man coverage. And Luther Burden, maybe you take a shot on the tools and you think we can coach him up, but I would feel a lot more comfortable doing that if again, you're adding him to a good receiver room versus asking him to just come in and be the guy,
I think what you just said 10 seconds ago is a great segue into the guy that I know you want to talk about next. And I think he's probably the last guy we'll spend a lot of time going back and forth. I want to talk about a bunch of other receivers. I think we'll do the more rapid fire. But there's one more guy that I want to talk back and forth with in depthly. And I know that we didn't plan this, but I know that you know who that is.
Yes, and we will talk about that player after a quick reminder that the Music City Audible is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. If you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check the link in this podcast description, you can join the In Crowd. In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Joining the In Crowd is free, so check it out, sinkersbeverages.com. All right, Justin, the receiver that we're teasing here is none other than, you probably guessed it, Washington State's Kyle Williams. I've asked you to give a little profile on each of the first two guys. If you don't mind, I'm going to give the Kyle Williams profile here. He is played it last 2 seasons at Washington State. 3 seasons before that, he was at UNLV. He did overlap. I'm sure if you're a Titans fan, you know this by now. He did overlap with Cam Ward for the 2023 season at Washington State. It wasn't his most productive season. That would have been last year when he really stepped up as like a super senior to be their leading receiver. The thing I love about Kyle Williams, and I've been harping on this the whole episode, Kyle Williams is an X receiver. And I know he doesn't have the typical size that an X receiver has. He's not 6'2", 6'3", 220, but he is, 5'10", 5'11-ish, 5'11", 190, I think. He ran a 4.4-ish 40, and I think 4.42 was his official combine time. So he's got speed. He doesn't have elite size, and I think that is one reason why people don't really look at him and think, oh, he can play X in the NFL. But guys like him have played X in the NFL when they are really good at certain things. I'm talking about Antonio Brown, Brandon Cooks. There's receivers that fit this mold that maybe he's not going to be. I mean, I don't think Kyle Williams is going to be the next Antonio Brown. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he can play the X receiver position because he defeats man coverage and especially press man coverage. That is my favorite thing about Kyle Williams. His release package to defeat press man coverage is extremely refined. And for a fifth-year guy who's been in college a long time, that is a must. If he was, a lot of times we talk about age, breakout age, and things like that for these receivers, and this can be a concern. And I do think you're foolish to think it's not at least a little bit of a concern with Kyle Williams being as old as he is. But I also think there's pluses to it because I think he is a pro-ready receiver right now. And I think that's why I like him so much for the Titans. I don't necessarily think Kyle Williams is going to be the best receiver in this class or even the best non-day one receiver in this class. I think he has a good chance to be that as a rookie because I think that release package and that ability to beat man-to-man coverage at a consistent rate is something that's the highest priority skill for me when I'm talking about a wide receiver, especially an X wide receiver. So I don't let the size diminish what I think of what he can be at the next level. I don't think he's ever going to be a contested catch, go ball guy, but he's a really good route runner, a really refined route runner, and has such a good release package. Those are things that it usually takes rookie receivers a lot of time to sort of refine and become really good at. And you're projecting like he's got the physical traits and ball skills. So can we teach him to run routes better? Can we teach him how to get off the line of scrimmage and beat press man coverage? Kyle Williams, you don't have to teach that stuff to. And another interesting aspect about Kyle Williams, Cam Ward, a lot of criticisms on Cam Ward's game when it comes to throwing the deep ball, especially outside the numbers. And I think that if you watch the 2024 Miami tape, you'll see that a lot of missed deep throws. But if you watch the 2023 Washington State tape, when he had a guy like Kyle Williams, Cam Ward looked like a much better downfield, go ball, outside the numbers thrower when he had a receiver like Kyle Williams, who is also very good at tracking the ball and very good at waiting, not indicating to the cornerback when the ball's coming because he has late hands. He puts his hands up to catch that ball so late. Now, he's not going to moss you. He's not T. Higgins. He's not going to go up and pluck a contested ball away from a defender. It's more similar, and I don't think there's a lot of similarities in their games, but at the catch point, it's kind of similar to A.J. Brown. You know, some of those catches that A.J. Brown made at Ole Miss, yes, but also when he was with the Titans, like on the sideline or on a go ball, where you almost don't even know how the ball got to him because it like almost goes like through the cornerback and it just like he puts his hands out really late and makes an amazing catch. Like there's some catches like that on Kyle Williams tape. So I'm really high on Kyle Williams. I think that there is a ceiling to his game because of the size and the not great ability to win those contested catch balls. And his contested catch, like raw numbers, are different from what I'm talking about when I say like his ability to actually go up and high point a ball over a cornerback. Like he doesn't have an elite vertical. He doesn't have obviously the size. So that's not where he wins those contested catches. He wins them with late hands and with ball tracking skills. He's a really good player. He's going to be a really good football player at the next level. Again, I don't know if he's a wide receiver 1. He's not probably Antonio Brown, but that upside is similar to me in the way that he gets off the line of scrimmage and can just beat man coverage routinely.
I like the connection with Cam Ward. There's the connection to Nick Holtz as well when he was at UNLV. Right. Titans offensive coordinator. Nick Holtz was his coordinator, play caller. One area I'll push back on you, and again, I love when we disagree. I love the release package. Yes, it does tend to lead me to believe that he can play X. I'm just not as convinced as you are. And the size is one factor, but the other one is, we watched the same games, I think. Did you feel like guys were just stepping up to the line of scrimmage and consistently pressing him? Like, I thought he faced a lot of off man as well. I thought there were times where he had a lot of cushion. And on top of it, I think the level of press man coverage that he's going to face at the next level from NFL caliber cornerbacks compared to what he saw at Washington State, I think is going to be a lot better. So the lack of size and physicality does leave a bit of a projection window for me when it comes to defeating physical press man. I'm just not as sold at on his ability to play X as you are. But I again, because the level of competition, the amount, and B, the type of press coverage he was seeing, and then of course the size. But I do love the release package, and that does tend to indicate you can beat anything when you've got a release package that he has. But I do think it's a bit of a more projection than you're leading on.
I think some of that is fair, but I also think some of that is his ability to avoid that physicality or the fear that he puts into cornerbacks because he has such a good release package that they're not exactly sure when and where to throw that punch. Now, could a guy like a L'Jarius Sneed, one of the most physical cornerbacks in the league?
That's what I mean, right? I don't think that he saw those guys at Washington State
of course
very
not.
much.
I do think that, the way Tyreek Hill was erased in that playoff game against the Dolphins when the Chiefs won the second Super Bowl before last year, like, I do think there's a chance that if he faced a player like that he could be erased as well. But hey, Tyreek Hill is still one of the best big play generating receivers in the league, and he couldn't beat L'Jarius Sneed either. And Kyle Williams isn't going to do it all himself. And if there are matchups like that where he's not as, where he has a disadvantage, yeah, I think he'll have quiet games. And that's why I don't think he's like a dominant number one bounder. Like, I don't think he is Antonio Brown. Like, he definitely has these deficiencies you're talking about. The physicality is certainly one of them, but I think he wins in so many other ways that he can get by without being that physical beast and still be, a chain mover on early downs and third and short. And like his ability to just separate so quickly with in-breaking and out-breaking routes complements what Cam Ward does well, coupled with he's one of the most explosive players in this class that's not talked about in that way. The number of times, there's been people putting these out on Twitter of just Cam Ward to Kyle Williams deep shots from the 2023 season. His ability to generate those 20-plus yard plays on deep balls because he tracks the ball really well and, again, creates separation really well. But also, this is a stat that I got from Josh Norris and Hayden Wink's breakdown on YouTube. He averaged 13 yards per catch after the catch on screen passes this past season. 13 yards per screen after the catch. He has really good vision. I don't think he's a super, he's not an elite yak threat. He's not going to break he's not A.J. Brown. I compared him a little bit to A.J. Brown at the catch point. He's not close to A.J. Brown in terms of running through tackles and shrugging off tackles and spinning out of tacklers. But he has good vision with the ball in his hands, and he can find open space. I don't think he's like a tackle breaker, but he's a tackle avoider in some ways. I do think there's also a little bit of Tyler Lockett to his game on the downfield stuff where he runs a deep post or something. He's going to catch the ball and go down on first contact more often than not. But I think getting him the ball in space, like on a screen where you have good blocking setup, he's going to turn that into an explosive. I just love so many elements of his game. And yeah, I recognize the size could be a capper on what kind of ceiling he could have, the physicality too. But there's so much that I like that I'm willing to accept those flaws and just put him in the position to make big plays and not ask him to be like a contested catch type of guy, or not ask him to beat not ask him to beat the more physical cornerbacks in the league. AJ Terrell, if you're going up against the Falcons, I'm going to move him around the formation more than I would going up against a team that doesn't have a super physical corner like that.
I'll put a bow on the Kyle Williams conversation, I think, by saying I like him a lot for the Titans for obvious reasons. The chemistry with Cam Ward and Nick Holtz. I mean, it's so weird, right? That he's got connections to both of them at different programs, and none of them were this past year, right? So definitely unique. Love him for the Titans for that reason. Could hit the ground running with him, especially help Cam Ward coming in. The final thing I'll say is, I do think Titans fans getting a little carried away. It's easy to get excited about those elements, but I do think at number 35, it would be a bit of a reach. I think, again, with the age, the breakout, the size, some of the size deficiencies, physicality deficiencies, I don't think this is a guy that's going 35 overall. I think, maybe he goes 55 overall. Maybe it's as late as 75 to 90, to be honest with you. But I don't think this guy probably goes 35.
And that's where I'll disagree. My hottest take, I think my hottest draft take, and some people agree with this, but most people do not, is that I don't think 35 is too early for him, because this is where it gets crazy. I would take him before Egbuka and Luther Burden.
Come on.
Egbuka, I can see the argument for. They're different players. They play totally different roles. If you I could see why you wouldn't take him over Emeka. I would take him over Luther Burden 10 times out of 10. And it's not because, again, I don't think that Luther Burden can be good. I'm too scared to take the risk on him. I think, he could go on to be a great receiver, and that's fine. I'll let him do that on someone else's team, because I think Kyle Williams is going to be a good receiver. He might be great, but he's going to be at least good. I really believe that. And that's why I would take him over Luther Burden. Emeka, that conversation is obviously, it's still a hot take to even say that they're maybe the same level of player, but I think that one's about preference and about role. And this, again, also has to do with I'm drafting for the 2024 Titans and the future of the Titans. I'm not drafting just in a vacuum which player is going to have the best season this year, who's going to be the best pro. And I do think there is something to the idea that you should just take good football players and not worry as much about that. But you do also have to construct these rooms to get the most out of every player on the roster. And taking a guy like Kyle Williams allows Calvin Ridley to be the best version of himself. We are not forcing him into the X role and asking him to be the guy beating press man coverage and overcoming double teams on the outside. And that's just not where Calvin Ridley, he can do that, but he's not as consistently good doing that. So taking a guy like Kyle Williams allows Calvin Ridley to be better, whereas taking Egbuka makes Calvin Ridley probably have to play more X, which means that even if Egbuka is a little better than Kyle Williams, and I think the margin is not that big, you're also getting a little bit worse version of Calvin Ridley. So the trade-off, that's why, and maybe I'm too narrow viewed on this, but that's why I like him so much. And
where I do disagree with you is I don't think there's any circumstance where they're asking Calvin Ridley to play X this year. I think if they draft Emeka Egbuka, I think the X is going to be a later round guy, and it doesn't excite you. I get it, or it's just going to be split between Van Jefferson, Bryce Oliver, and Treylon Burks. If the Titans don't draft two receivers that could play right away, guess what? One of those guys is going to be on the field in 11 personnel anyway, and I think it'll be as the X. Right, so I think it's it was Nick Westbrook-Akine this past year, and they wouldn't even give him $3 million in free agency. So it's I think you're overblowing it a little bit. Where for me, as long as they get a great player, if he ends up being the slot, so be it. One of those other guys will be the X. Because guess what? If they end up getting an X, one of those guys is probably the slot. Bryce Oliver, Traylon, you know what I mean? So it's I think we're blowing it a little out of proportion. But if you don't want one of those guys to play the X or the slot, then you got to get two receivers that could play right away in this class. That's the way the room is constructed right now. It's very bad.
Yeah, no, that is fair. And I think the other thing about Kyle Williams is he is versatile. He could play all three spots, and he lines up at all three spots. And that's something else that I think just boosts his value, whereas I'm not sure Burden can play all three. I don't think Burden can play all three spots. I think he's two at most, and same thing for Emeka. So that's why, again, I think they are closer to being in the same conversation, and I think NFL teams will agree just because there is a a lack of X receivers in this class. I'm not saying they're going to agree that Williams is going to go before both of those guys.
We're keeping the receipts, man. Let's see where they all end. I know it's not always, but let's see where they end up. I'm curious now.
I agree, but let's do that in a year because I don't want to do it based on who gets drafted first because Jalen Reagor went before Justin Jefferson, so it's not just about that. But yeah, I think that I'm really high on him, and I know that I'm higher on him than most, and I know it's a hot take, and I'm willing to die on that hill because I think he's going to be a good player, whereas I think the range of outcomes for Burden, the range of outcomes are Treylon Burks to Justin Jefferson, maybe not that high, but like he could be a really good player. Devonta Smith, maybe he could be a really good player, or he could be a guy that takes 3 years to figure it out. And the Titans don't have 3 years to figure it out. And Kyle Williams, you know, it's almost the Cam Ward argument. He's seen so much ball. He's gotten better every year. He's been in multiple programs. Like, I don't know. That's why, again,
transfer portal. Everyone in the draft has seen so much ball and seen so many programs.
Not Luther Burden.
No, not Luther Burden, but I feel like everyone I'm talking to so many guys. When you said that, it's funny. I've asked everyone about their decision to transfer, why they got better this past year. Like, it's just so, you know, you get better as you get older, right? And you play more. But before this turns into a Kyle Williams solo episode, those are the three we wanted to hit on, I think. And now let's do some rapid fire.
Yeah. Hang on, wait. Let me tee this up because I think there's like, those are the options at 35 or in a small trade back or even in the Matt Miller trade up scenario. Like it's one of those three guys. Trade up, it's not Kyle Williams. At 35, probably not Kyle Williams, but I wouldn't rule it out. Trade down, it's probably more Kyle Williams. If the Titans acquire an extra third round pick or if somebody slips to 103 in the fourth round and they don't get a third round pick, my top receiver option there, if all the guys we just talked about are off the board, is Tre Harris. Tell me about Tre Harris.
Well, Ole Miss, you know, I didn't know you were going to bring him up. I wasn't prepared for this, but big-bodied, I didn't know you were going to bring him up now. Big-bodied, athletic guy, makes plays vertically down the field, is good at the catch point, explosive, attacks the ball at its apex. A limited route tree. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you've done just as much film study on him as I have. Limited route tree. Again, made a lot of plays vertically. I would say did not make a whole lot of other plays on anything else. So I think this is a guy that's coming in with a bit of a limited route tree, in my opinion.
No doubt, he had a very limited route tree. It was almost entirely goes, curls, and comebacks, and the occasional screen. There are some reps on his tape of him running that deep dig, the 15-yard dig, where he can, like, I think he has a play on his tape where he houses one of those, or maybe it's a deep post or something like that. But he can run those. He didn't do it as much. And I definitely think there's some projection there, and this is why he's not a second-round pick to me, because you do have to project. But I also think it's very similar to DK Metcalf coming out of Ole Miss. And DK Metcalf, I mean, I haven't really followed DK Metcalf's career that closely in the NFL, but I don't know that he wins in a lot of different ways than what he was doing at Ole Miss.
True. And he doesn't. No, it's vertically, right? Like,
yeah, at vertical and comeback. And if you can threaten the verticality so much, it opens up the comeback. And granted, DK Metcalf was a physical specimen, and I don't think Tre Harris is in that elite category. The 4.3 speed at 6'4" or whatever DK was, and the viral photo of him next to AJ Brown flexing the insane build, I'll call it. But I do think there's a lot of very intriguing elements to Tre Harris's game that haven't been tapped yet, like the in-breaking potential. And granted, he's got to be able to snap those routes off inside to really create separation on them. But he also has incredible ball skills. I mean, you've seen the one-handed catches at the sideline and just ability to track the ball. His ability after the catch, he can break tackles. He is like, if they go Egbuka at 35, my absolute favorite pairing with that kind of player would be Tre Harris, who averaged, by the way, over 5 yards per route run last season, which is mind-boggling. And that's just box score scouting. So you go watch the tape and you see explosive play after explosive play on his tape, which is why you can get that high on the yards per route run, because on the routes he runs where he doesn't get a target or whatever, that gives you a 0 added to the average, right? But then when the routes he runs where he gets the ball in his hands and he turns it into a 35, 45, 50-yard play, that pushes that yards per route run number up so high. He is a true definition of an explosive playmaker. There are some concerns. Again, you're projecting his ability to run a full route tree unless you don't ask him to do that, which makes him easier to cover. And then the other big concern to me, and this is maybe the biggest concern as far as like rooting for him to be a Titan is the injury history. He's missed multiple games. The Titans showed a huge propensity to only target guys who have been extremely durable in their NFL career this last round of free agency under Mike Borgonzi's leadership. Would Mike Borgonzi rule out a player with an injury history, or would he take a chance if you're talking a 4th round pick, like pick 103, as opposed to a 2nd round pick? What are your thoughts on Tre Harris?
I mean, you said a lot of it, right? I mean, I think I kind of started, right? I did talk about the route tree, and we said a lot of similar things. 6'2", 205 are the official measurements for those of you wondering. Ran a 4.54 at the combine. I know we're all obsessed these days with the 4.3s, but I think 4.54 at that size checks that box for me. It's not a concern at all.
And you see it
again.
You see it on play tape. Speed, yeah.
Right, yes, the vertical ability on tape. 38.5 vert, 10.5 broad. We're pretty damn, good results in those categories. I was going to bring up the injuries. I didn't think you were going to bring it up, but he's had some things these last 2 years. Started at Louisiana Tech, by the way, so he has been around for a while. Goes over to Ole Miss, I think before 2023, I think it was. Not at 35, I'm with you, but again, maybe deep trade back. I think even 45-50 might be a smidge early. But I do think once you get to that 75 to 103 range, I think that's his sweet spot. If the Titans, again, if they go edge with that 2nd round pick, or if they trade down and still go edge with the 1st pick, maybe at the back end of the 3rd, top
or
of the 4th.
Or take the slot guy in Emeka.
Right, yes, and then take this guy as your X, absolutely, to come in and compete. Again, not a lot of true X receivers in this class. He is one of them, in my opinion. I want to run through some rapid fire. One guy, because you seem to transition us into a spot where we're talking about guys that are later options. I still think there are...
We skipped Jayden Higgins. I got you.
Okay, you took the words out of my mouth. I do think Jayden Higgins could be an option here at 35. Now, this is not going where you think it's going to go. As I'm getting older, I think, like I used to, you guys joke about in the group chat, Melo likes everyone. This year, I've got criticisms on everybody I watch. When I went, resurfaced the Jay Higgins tape, a couple weeks ago, I went in saying, boxes that are so important to me, size, production, testing, blew the lid off the combine, 1,000-yard receiver, a couple years now at Iowa State. What is he, like 6'2", 6'3"? What is he, 6'2", 6'3", 214? Like, outstanding, right? So I do think those 3 things, size, production, athleticism, screams he's going early. And I do think he's going to go one of the first receivers off the board in that 2nd round. So I do think 35 is appropriate for him. The one hang up on tape for me, and maybe I'm losing my mind, but I didn't find that he consistently played to that size all the time.
Well, let me stop you there, because I think in your mind, he's 6'2", 6'3". He measured over 6'4" at the combine.
Right. Thank you. Yes. He's 6'4", 215 at the combine, right? Now, I couldn't, I remember it was 215. Now, I just felt on tape when corners had a chance to make a play on the ball at the catch point, that they did it a little more frequently than I would like them to, if that makes sense. I wanted to see him play a bit more bully ball when there was that 50-50. And I do think he goes up and he high points the ball. I just thought corners had more success playing through his hands than I wanted them to. And I don't know that that's a take that's out there. Maybe I'm crazy. There was just too many times where I thought I saw a pass breakup at the catch point where I want to see a 6'4", 215 receiver not let that happen. That's how I felt about it. But I feel like I'm getting overly picky here. Like, if they want an X guy, the size, the production, the athleticism, like, those are 3 so important boxes for me, and he checked all of them.
For me, those boxes are secondary to me. Like, I think that
Did you watch him? Like, did you see what I saw? Or
yes, and I'm getting to that. Like, the quality of your release package and ability to beat press man coverage is so much more important to me than your size or your speed, because I think NFL receivers come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, Odell Beckham was not tall and he was great. We've seen super big time tall athlete receivers enter the league and totally bust. Like, I don't put as much stock into the testing and the numbers as I do the tape. And to me, some areas of concern for me with Jayden Higgins, like, and before I get into them, I'll just say this is why I'm so locked in on Kyle Williams, because I think most of these guys are going to bust. Like, let's be absolutely real about this. Most guys bust. Like, your expectations for the player you like in the draft are too high. They're just too high. And we'll do more of that later. Like, and that goes for every single player, including Cam Ward. Your expectations are too high. And I'm going to elaborate on that point in a couple weeks on a different episode. But I will say, Jayden Higgins, like, I think that his ability to run like crisp routes and really create separation with that athleticism that he has. Like, you look at the broad jump and the vertical jump, a 39-inch vert, 10-foot, 8-inch broad, like, that's elite athleticism. But if you can't use that to create separation and have like short area sudden quickness and change of direction in your routes, like, I don't think he creates a ton of separation, which is why he's in those contested catches situations so often. And then, like you said, he doesn't win them often enough. Like, yeah, he wins some, of course. He has some incredible catches on his tape, but he also has too many. Like, if you look at a highlight reel, you say this guy's the next Megatron. But if you look at the actual tape, there's a lot of inconsistency. I also think for a guy that big and that fast and that strong, like, he should break tackles. He should create explosives with the ball in his hands.
After the catch, there's very little there, almost nothing.
Agreed.
I'm torn. I don't want to say push back, but like, I agree that the change of direction is a problem. I thought the initial quickness off the snap was good enough. Like, at least when I factor the size into it, right? Like 6'4", 215, I thought he moves just fine off the snap for 6'4", 215. But I like the after the catch stuff, the change of the direction, and the not consistently playing to the size. Again, you watch a highlight reel, you're going to be like, no, this guy makes unbelievable acrobatic X-style catch. And there, again, that's why I said maybe I'm getting too picky in my old age. But you did seem to agree. And we full disclosure, folks, we did not talk about this. We did not talk about Jayden Higgins off the air at all. So I didn't even know that you had watched them. I worried I'd put you on the spot. So it's good to hear that we saw some of the same things without even knowing that the other thought that, because I don't remember what game it was, but I watched, and it happened in every game I watched, but there were one specifically where I just felt the corner kind of kept making plays at the catch point, and I didn't love to see that from 6'4", 215.
I don't think you're being too picky at all. And like, you could say the same thing to me, or I could say the same thing you just said. Maybe I'm being too picky when it comes to like Luther Burden and my concerns on Emeka Egbuka, but like, I think being picky is better than not being picky. And if like you miss a guy because you were a little too picky and like he gets into the league and improves a lot, and the projection that you have to, put on him to actually take the next step happens, like, then whatever, you missed on a guy. But I think you're better off being too picky versus ending up with, like, again, a Traylon Burke situation where there was a lot of projection there and he never met that high standard that, he was a first round freaking top 16 pick in the draft, like, and he did not meet that draft stock. So I think you're better off being too picky, because again, like, we're continuing to see loaded receiver classes every year after year. All these guys are playing the position at an earlier age, and there's more passing in high school, and there's higher volume passing in college now than there was 15 years ago. So we're going to continue to keep seeing these stacked receiver classes, but that doesn't mean they're all going to come into the league and be good. Like, some of the situations they're in college generate production in a way where it doesn't work like that at the NFL. At the NFL, you have to be able to beat man coverage, or you have to have somebody else on your roster that is going to do it at such a high level that it opens windows and space for you to operate underneath. And I don't think he's the guy that's going to I'm out on Jayden Higgins at 35 for sure. If he falls to the 4th round somehow, which I don't expect to happen, then maybe you take a swing on a guy with his measurables. But like, I am being picky, and I'm being really picky on basically everyone except for Kyle Williams.
I was going to say just Kyle Williams, I think. The last guy I want to talk about before I get into rapid fire is his teammate, Jalen Noel, Iowa State. Another guy I'm going to be a little picky on, and it's funny. I just did this on my phone right now, not knowing if I'm an idiot or for the results were going to show exactly what I wanted them to show, and they do. This is why I'm concerned with these guys every year. So Jalen Noel, 5'10", 194, was great at the Senior Bowl. At the Combine, 4'3", 940, 41.5-inch vert, 11.2 broad. Some of the freakish measurement testing results out of this class. You know who it reminds?
6'8", 3 cone.
Yes, stupid. Okay, stupid stuff. Short area quickness to boot. I've got the same question on, can he consistently beat man coverage, physical? He is not an X receiver, absolutely not. He's a slot, maybe a Z if you want to be nice, but I think there's a chance he's only a slot. You know what name just came to mind and it scared me? I get scared with these guys every year because it's so easy to fall in love. And maybe this isn't even fair because the book's not fully written. And I looked it up. Am I an idiot or not? I wanted to know. Roman Wilson from last year's class, Michigan, went super early, did absolutely nothing for the Steelers this past year, was injured for a lot of it, but there are concerns there. Roman Wilson, I looked it up. You didn't see me smiling in the background. I go, do I remember this correctly? Exact same 40 time, 4.39 at the NFL Combine. Uncoverable at the Senior Bowl last year, just like Jalen Noel was this year. Questions about the be able to beat press man, to beat coverage. We didn't see it this year. Did nothing for the Steelers. Again, size, he actually has an inch taller than Jalen Noel. He's 5'11". Jalen Noel's 5'10". I will say from a weight perspective, Noel was about 10 pounds heavier than Roman Wilson. So that does make a difference. And unfortunately, Wilson didn't do anything else. So we don't have the vertical, the broad, the three cone from the combine. I do think Noel is a bit more impressive because we've got, again, the numbers. I imagine if Roman Wilson was going to run a 6.85 three cone, he would have done it, right? Like these guys are very strategic with what they do. If he was going to jump a 41 vert, 11 broad, he would have done it, right? But he didn't. And Jalen Noel did. So in fairness to Jalen Noel, but I get concerned with these types every year. Like I get carried away with the Senior Bowl stuff. I get carried away with the combine testing. He was very productive at Iowa State. They were the two towers over there. They caught every ball thrown their way. But I do worry about the slot specific role that he might have to play and the ability to get off coverage.
Yeah, I think if he faces off coverage a lot, playing from the slot and moving around the formation, I think he's an explosive playmaker. He's not a wide receiver 1. He's not even close. Like this isn't. Right. He doesn't profile that way at all. Could he be a wide receiver 2? Or more of like 3 catches a game, but one of those catches goes for 35 yards type of guy who creates explosive plays here and there. That's kind of the role I see for him. And I think he would be effective in that role as a guy that's just like, he's not not a target monster, a target hog, but a guy who occasionally you flip it to him on a swing pass with some blockers out front, or you send him on a seam
good
go.
After the catch. Yeah. He's going to move the chains. He's going to be good out of the slot, like you said. There's some wasted movement in his route running. I think that's got to be cleaned up, but it should be by a pro receivers coach. But there are some good and bad here. Not at 35. I think you'd say the same.
No,
I don't know where he's going. I can't get a handle on it because I feel like he might go way earlier than everybody thinks. I look at like a Ricky Pearsall last year who went super early. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if he does go like, the 50 to 80 range.
Right.
I think at there, 80, 90, 103, I think it makes some sense. But he could go in the 30s or 40s, but I don't think the Titans should be the team that does that.
One element I think that is a positive that I would say could push him up like a half a round to a full round ahead of where he should go as a pure receiver is the special teams value. And, with the NFL moving the kickoff, like the touchback up another 5 yards, it's going to lead to more kickoff chances, obviously punt returns. I think he can be a return specialist as like a rookie, and you work him in to your offense in specific packages where you can try to create explosive plays with him. That could cause him to get overdrafted, but at least he has a floor there. Like at least he's going to provide value to your roster on special teams, even if it takes him a little bit of time to like be a true weapon on offense. So I would like him in a trade down from 35 scenario. Like he's not my first choice. He's not my favorite pick, but if the Titans decide that they, if they've met with him and they like him and they like his his mental aspect approach to the game, then I would get on board with that pick, even though just like from pure tape, he wouldn't be my first choice in that scenario.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. I'm going to go into rapid fire now. A guy that I love and that, I don't know if the Titans have shown interest in him, but one that I really like on tape is Jalen Royals from Utah State. We talk about physicality a lot. I mean, he might be the most physical receiver in the class. You just get your hands off him at the line of scrimmage. He's so good at fighting those battles and winning those battles. And then he's so damn good and strong after the catch in the open field. Big time producer 2 years in a row. I really like him. Another one that's really intriguing to me, I just interviewed and reported the Titans had a virtual with recently, is Ty Felton from Maryland. Here's a guy that went over like 1,100 receiving yards this year, had 100 catches, a bunch of TDs, runs 4.37 at the combine. The vertical and the broad are outstanding too. He's got X size from a height perspective, The concern for me on him, and I know it makes the evaluation a bit more complicated. I don't know that he's a straightforward X because of the height, because he's very wiry in his frame. Like, tell me what he measured. I know people drop a couple pounds for the combine to run faster, but I think he was in the 180s. Like, he is a little wiry, and you see that show up on tape. And it does sometimes prevent him, I think, from beating press coverage. I just don't know that he handles that so well because of the weight. Xavier Restrepo, a very obvious one. The connection to Cam Ward, slot only guy, in my opinion. Maybe the Z once again. We thought he was going to go really early, but then he runs like a 4.8 reportedly at Pro Day after not running at the combine. Maybe he's available later than we think because of that. Obviously, the connection with Cam Ward. And again, if you're going with an X like a Tre Harris or a Jayden Higgins, even though we wouldn't love that, makes more sense, I think, to come back later and get a Restrepo to fill out that receiver room and give him a weapon he's familiar with. Another guy that I quickly want to talk about that I think is being underrated. You want to give me to give you an underrated name on day 3. Titans had a Zoom meeting with him. I know they Zoom with a lot of people, but they had one with Arkansas wide receiver Andrew Armstrong. The lack of hype is a little confusing to me. So this guy plays at Arkansas, okay? This past year, he leads the SEC in catches, receiving yards, and yards per game. 78 catches, 1,140 yards, 103.6 per game, okay? Does that in the SEC. Oh, well, then he must be really small. What don't I like about him? He's 6'3", 202. Great size for the position. Well, then he must have tested really poorly, right? He goes to the combine, jumps to 37.5 vert, 10.4 broad, outstanding results. I talked about the combine time, 4.51. That's a good result for 6'3", 202, excuse me. There's a lot to like about Andrew Armstrong. I think on day 3, he might be a steal.
Good ones. Good rapid fire. I'm going to throw a couple more names at you. Just give me your
And I thought
thoughts.
you might want to say something about a Ty Felton. Feel free, or a Restrepo, but throw a couple names at me.
We've taken enough time. How about Dante Thornton Jr. from Tennessee? Let's pander to the Vols fans real quick, because he also has met with the Titans. I
never like to get mean on here. Can he catch? Like, I don't know that he can catch. I'm sorry. Like, it reminds me of, who is that guy coming out a couple of years ago? Shit, the name's going to escape. Came out of Auburn, man. What? Cleveland Browns drafted him. Schwartz. Size, speed.
Anthony.
Yes. Size, speed, couldn't catch the football, man. I got the same concerns with Dante Thornton. I think number one thing you got to do, right, is catch the ball. I just pulled up Lance Zierlein on NFL Combine. What does he say about, what does he say about Andrew Armstrong? What are the negatives? Tight-hipped, average feet, and lack of separation. I get that. I think those are the things you'll see that are why he's going to go on day 3. But again, the testing was good. The production was good. The size was good. They want to take a chance on an X guy late. I like Andrew Armstrong. Dante Thornton, for me, it's a hard pass. Just I don't have confidence that he can consistently catch the football.
How about Isaiah Bond?
Yeah, I mean, look, the athleticism is there, obviously. The production wasn't. You might be able to speak to that as someone who tuned in weekly to the Texas Longhorns. But the Titans met with him, right? I think they had him in for a 30 visit and a combine formal. Now, to me, yes, sometimes it signals interest, but it also sometimes signals I got to check a box. A lot of boxes to check on Isaiah Bond. You've got questions about the off-field concerns. You've got questions about the lack of production at Texas this year. Really didn't make any sense to me. I thought he was going to take a big step in the production category, and he didn't. The off-field stuff you got to comb through. I said this in an article. I got some flack for it. I don't know what Mike Borgonzi thinks about off-field stuff. It might not matter. The Kansas City Chiefs just rolled the dice on everybody that's got off-field concerns. It might not be a thing for him, and it might be why he brought in Isaiah Bond. But for me, I've got questions about the off-field and the lack of production. But again, he might be there in the 4th round based on that stuff, and you like the athleticism, maybe you take a chance. He's not for me personally.
He's not for me either, and I say this as a Texas fan. He started the year really well, and there's a play early on in the year where he gets jammed at the line. The cornerback knocks his helmet off. His mouth guard gets knocked out of his face, and he readjusts his helmet mid-route, flips his head around, and makes a great catch. But there were too many times this year where he would just disappear, and he was dealing with an injury, and he tried to play through it, and then he couldn't play through it, and then he tried to come back from it, and then he had to miss more time, and then it was just a really up and down season that was like a roller coaster. It was it started up, and then it was just down, and then there were a few little bumps from there, but it was mostly down, I think, after like the first few games of the year. And I don't know him, and I don't want to judge his mentality or his personality or anything like that. I'll just say what it felt like as a fan was it felt like he was mentally soft. And again, I don't know him at all, so I don't want to just like outright call him that, but that's sort of the vibe I got, was like, oh, you're a little banged up, so you're not going to like push yourself as hard. Even though you're on the field, we appreciate like you trying, but he would give up on routes. His lack of effort at the catch point directly led to multiple interceptions that Quinn Ewers threw that were like not on Quinn Ewers. They were on Isaiah Bond, and just like disappeared from games and big moments when the Titans really needed him. And there's a reason that Matthew Golden like stepped up, and Steve Sarkisian was talking to Colt McCoy about this. It's floating around Twitter, part of Underdog, recently, that like Matthew Golden started to emerge as the leader in that locker room and like really came on throughout the year because they needed him.
They both transferred in, and I don't think they thought that was going to be the case, right? You're like,
no,
they thought it was going to be Bond, but it wasn't.
And they needed him to do that because Bond failed to live up to expectations. So if you're already failing to live up to expectations in college, I question your ability to live up to expectations at the next level when everything ratchets up. So I'm also out on Isaiah Bond. Any other rapid fire names you want to throw out there, just like for Titans fans to go familiarize themselves with?
Not really. I think for me, I'll end by, I didn't talk enough about Jalen Royals because I like him so much. I don't know if I properly conveyed that. I think he's a little different than some of the types we've talked about. He's very different. I don't, we've said short area explosiveness and not initial quickness. I don't think those are his selling traits, but I do think the physicality, I think he's really instinctual. I think he does a great job with body control, and he is outstanding after the catch. He really is special after the catch. He's smooth enough to move inside, outside. I love, again, the Senior Bowl. I thought he was going to get called on a couple penalties, the way he was trying to fight off press man. I really like Jalen Royals, and I think that's someone, and he was good on contested catches because of the body control. I really like him. And again, some of those, things we talked about with Egbuka and Burden and even Kyle Williams might not be there, but I think the physicality and he's a bull in the open field. The yard after catch is so much fun on his tape. So that out of this group we talked about, the second tier group, the Ty Feltons, the Restrepos, even, I think I'm higher on Jalen Royals than any of them.
Oh, wow. I think Restrepo gets a bump in my mind just for the connection with Cam Ward, which may or may not be fair to him and the rest of the class, but got to make your rookie quarterback comfortable. First and foremost, if he doesn't succeed, everyone's fired and the team fails. So whatever it takes to make Cam Ward successful, I would maybe put a premium on that. And Kyle Williams is part of that. Xavier Restrepo is also part of that. All right. That's it. We have talked about receivers we'd like the Titans to target and some guys that we hope they don't target. And look, if they draft one of the guys that we just were very hard on, we'll be honest on our recap, our emergency reaction that we'll be taping during the NFL draft. All right, Justin, this was a bit of a long one, but hope everyone enjoyed it, talking through these receivers. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and drop a comment below. Who are your favorite mid-round receiver targets for the Titans in this draft? Let us know below. Let us know where you agree and disagree. Let us know what you think about my hot takes, my anti-Luther Burden, which again, it's going to come off as more negative than I really feel, because I think Burden can definitely be a successful NFL receiver. I just don't love the fit in Tennessee. And if they draft him at 35, I'm going to have to eat those words hard. But
I was high on him in Egbuka. I've got my social clip ready if that's the route they go.
But I will not change my tune. I will not be like, oh, actually, he's really good.
No,
like that's not what I'm going to do. But hopefully he proves me wrong if the Titans do draft him. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Sinkers Beverages. We'll see you guys soon. We're going to do edge players at some point the Titans might target. And we got a great guest coming on next week as well. So until next time, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.